Well, the debate on renting versus buying, I know everybody kind of goes through that internal debate when they're trying to get into a home, especially when mortgage rates are higher. But today we've got a specific scenario. What if you have a short time frame in terms of where you want to live? Is it still better to buy and have that equity, or would you be better off financially just renting? We're going to break down the numbers next, right here on the Smart Mortgage Show. Welcome in, Ben George with Bill Litton at Cross Country Mortgage. He is a regional president there in Chadsford, Pennsylvania. And Bill, this is a question we've kind of discussed a little bit. I'm going to be a little more specific on what I ask you here, but I know that the debate always when people are looking to buy a home, especially for the first time, does it really make sense though? And I'm paying so much in interest versus just renting. I could maybe save a little bit more monthly by renting. And that debate just always pops up. I'm sure you hear it a lot.
It does. It pops up a lot. And what I would say is, um, what's really important to do in those scenarios is to look at all of the numbers. And what I would say is, if you're really struggling, okay, and by the way, a lot of people, when I talk to them, I ask, what are your motivations to buy? And a lot of times people will say, I'm sick of paying somebody else's mortgage,
Yeah.
right? They get that as renting, they're paying somebody else's mortgage, or they might say, buying a house is an investment, and I want to invest. I want to realize some of that investment. So sometimes though, people aren't as clear, and we need to help them understand all the benefits. And the numbers are pretty astounding when you look at the comparison of buy versus rent between the appreciation of the property and the tax advantages and the amortization of paying the loan down. In those, adding all those three factors together, and there are other factors, of course, but from a financial standpoint, it becomes a lot more clear.
Well, I think a lot of people understand that, especially when you're looking long term. Hey, I'm finding a home, I'm a place I'm going to live for, 10, 20, 30 years. Yeah, it makes sense. But for this video, Bill, I'm curious about when it doesn't make sense. And the specific situation is, hey, I'm going to move somewhere for 5 years, let's say. So not a long term, right? There's a lot that goes into buying a home. It takes some work to get everything in place to do that. Is it worth the trouble? Because when you look at the amortization schedule, right, you're paying a lot of interest up front. That's part of the process. So when you look at it and say, okay, well, these first 5 years, I'm paying almost nothing but interest anyway. Does it make more sense to go ahead and rent, maybe have a smaller payment? I'm not really losing a whole lot in terms of equity. Is I at the right path? So how would you answer that, or how would you address someone that is in that situation?
I would say that example of 5 years is a really good example because in almost any market, you can look back over time in the history of our country, except for 2008, right? Which it still stings a little because it wasn't that long ago, but go back into the 1940s all the way until today, excluding 2008, and you'll see that appreciation is abundant. And especially in the area that I live in, Delaware County, Chester County, Pennsylvania, Newcastle County, Delaware, just outside of Philadelphia, considered the Rust Belt. Even in 2008, values didn't fall the way that they did around the country. They didn't fall that way here. So we have a very stable housing market. But because of the stability in the housing market, if you look at the numbers over 5 years and you consider the appreciation and the amortization, a 5 year period, you're absolutely going to end up in a better spot owning versus renting just financially. Now, we also have, like we talk about a house and a home, right? The house considerations are more of the financial ones. So as a house and an investment, it's absolutely going to make sense. But also as a home and a place that you own and you can beautify and you can make your own and you improve it and you get the value out of that. I mean, those are all other reasons why it would make sense as well.
What is typically the time frame then, if that you would say, you're probably in many cases better off renting than buying? I'm sure there's a short enough time frame, 5 years, obviously that sounds like buying is still, for the most part, and everybody's situation is different, is going to be a better option to still buy. But in terms of, hey, it may actually make sense financially to just rent, what's that time frame typically look like?
Yeah. So if it's 2 years, 2 years is the point where we really want to put information into a calculator and see, does it make sense? Because you have to consider the cost to buy the house, there's closing costs, and to sell the house, there's closing costs. So any of the appreciation and the amortization are probably going to be eaten up in that 2 year period by the costs to buy and sell. So that is where, unless there's some other overarching reason why buying would make sense for a short period of time, like 2 years, strictly from a financial sense, that's where we say, 1 year, you're probably going to lose money. 2 years, you're probably going to break even. So is it worth it? So that's our threshold.
Is it your job as a mortgage lender to push them one way or the other? If somebody comes in and says, Bill, I know it's only a year and a half, but I definitely want to buy this home and live here and just own it for the year or two that I'm going to be here. Is it your job to help work them through that and find a mortgage that works? Or do you run the numbers with them and say, hey, I just don't think it's a great decision?
So to your point, there are, in cases, mortgage options that could make that 2 year period make more financial sense. So we're going to look at, hey, if you could buy with a temporary buy down, or the interest rate is low enough that your payments are low enough to where now we've got another consideration here that you paid well under market of what you would have rented for in a monthly payment standpoint. So now within 2 years, yes, your cost to buy, sell is equal to the appreciation and the amortization, but you lived below market rates for what they would have been to rent. It's a great point, Ben. And yes, we're looking at that and we're creating awareness for those situations. So, and sometimes it would definitely, we tell people you might not want to buy. Buying makes sense most of the time, but not all the time. If you're pretty sure that within 1 year you're moving out of state and you've got a job and you don't want to be a landlord, you don't want to keep the property, you don't want anything to do with that. That's where we think, I don't know if it's going to make a whole lot of sense to buy. You might make a little more sense renting in that situation. But to your point, there are folks that for a variety of reasons really want to buy in that short period of time. We're going to look at options that just might help them to achieve both buying and having financial benefits within that first 2 years.
Yeah. And you brought up the rental on the backside. I mean, that's another good point. I mean, somebody might decide, hey, I want to keep this home and rent it for a couple of years and see, if I can maybe make back a little bit that way. So there's a lot that goes into that. And I'm sure you worked through that with someone. But I guess kind of to close this out, Bill, if you are moving to a new city, a new location, probably best to kind of have those plans in place when you go, right? Because the longer that draws on, the harder it is to make money or break even, whatever those financial numbers look like. Time is of the essence, right? When you're getting into that home. So make your mind up very quickly, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key to being able to do that is just to work with somebody who can provide good advice for those scenarios, right? Because if you don't do this every day, you're probably not going to see all the angles. You're probably, you don't know what you don't know. So I would say definitely link up with, your financial advisor, a good mortgage lender, your accountant. Everybody kind of put their heads together to help make sure you're making the best decisions possible in a timely manner.
All right, very good. Well, something to think about. So if you are moving, probably still a good idea. Always entertain the option to buy over rent. It can just be a financial benefit for you over the long term. But if you want to break down, look at the numbers. As Bill says, Cross Country Mortgage will look at the math, run the numbers, see what makes the most sense for you. You can do that by visiting smartmortgageshow.com, schedule a time to take advantage of a free 15-minute mortgage loan consultation. Bill, thanks for your time as always. Talk to you again right here on the Smart Mortgage Show.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
This program is for informational purposes only. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action. Bill Litton is a loan advisor and regional president with Cross Country Mortgage, NMLS number 147060.